The U.S. has nominated Ajay Banga, a former head of MasterCard, to replace David Malpass as the president of the World Bank when Malpass leaves in June. The U.S. nominee has since embarked on a global tour, which includes Africa, drumming up support for his candidacy. So what should be Africa's agenda for the incoming World Bank president? And indeed, the organization, as Ajay Banga started his African tour this week at the EFDB headquarters in Abidjan. I'm speaking now on this to Professor of Economics at the Lagos Business School, Bongo Adi. A warm welcome to the show tonight. Thank you very much, Professor. How would you describe the relationship between the World Bank and Africa since the agency was created back in 1944 at the end of around the World War II?
Thank you very much for having me this evening again, Bosin. You can see that the Indians are running the world right now, right? So the leading corporations in the world are led by Indians, and then the World Bank is also falling to them, which is a great thing. I pray that Nigeria will also be there someday. Yes, a relationship between Africa and the World Bank has been quite cordial. Not just that. I mean, the World Bank has been very, very effective in helping to grow African economics, to advance development in Africa. So going back to the formation of the World Bank, the foundation, World Bank is one of the Bretton Woods institutions created in 1944. Towards the end of the Second World War. So you understand the conditions under which the World Bank was created. We today call it the World Bank, but originally it was the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, IBRD. And of course, as its name implied, so it meant that the World Bank was actually created to rebuild the war-torn economies of especially Europe after the World War. And then IMF, another sister institution to the World Bank, was also created on the same day. I think that was the month of July. Why IMF focused on ensuring monetary stability and that the world economy did not fall back to the same conditions that created the Great Recession. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear, Prof.
All right.
Yes.
So the World Bank on its own focused on development, but initially it was just about rebuilding those war-torn economies in Europe. I mean, some people would say that, okay, that was kind of an American strategy to recoup their investment in the war. So they needed to rebuild the economies of Europe so that they can start to repay the expenses that America incurred on their behalf. But then over the years, of course, the mandate of the World Bank has changed, to encompass so many developmental aspects. I can't think of any area of our life today that the World Bank isn't heavily invested, whether it's health or education or even social security and public finance or governance or whatever, what have you. By the way, I am a beneficiary of the World Bank. Their investment in education, many years ago, I was one of those who benefited from the World Bank, Joint Japan World Bank graduate scholarship, right? So World Bank has really helped African economies over the years.
So, in a manner of speaking, we've seen the impact of the World Bank Group interventions in African economies. Now, a new president is being nominated by the U.S., Ajay Banga, and he met with the EFDB chief addition in Abidjan this week. I'm sure across Africa, folks' thoughts are different about how folks on the street view the World Bank and its sister organization, the IMF, as far as they are concerned, in terms of their interventions and advice and policy advice of countries and economies in Africa. What are your thoughts on this meeting? What do you think the EFDB should be? What should the relationship be? What should be the agenda for Africa via the EFDB to the World Bank, to the new president nominee?
So it's good that we're having, someone who has, coming from a developing country like India, now leading the World Bank. So definitely the priorities of the World Bank will have to change. So we've had a kind of a situation whereby the World Bank has been, imposing some kind of solutions, on African countries rather than, having homegrown participatory approaches, even though the World Bank preaches such, but it has not been the case over the years. I mean, some critics, as you said, the man on the street would think that the World Bank, just come with imported scenarios, sometimes that do not work. All right. But this time around, we will expect that, the World Bank will be more oriented towards homegrown solutions to problems. There have been a lot of criticism to the World Bank approach to solving problems in developing countries over the years. I don't know if you have read the book, The Story of the Economic Hitman, and all of that. Even William Easterly, a professor at New York University, wrote a book, what he called the White Man's Burden, which actually criticized the Bretton Woods approach to solving some of these developmental problems. Because most times, even the funds that are earmarked for some of these problems get paid, a majority of it, gets, taken up in the payment of consultants who happen to come from developed countries. So at the end of the day, what you see that translates into redevelopment isn't much. So we'll be looking towards a situation where that changes. And then the good thing also is that AJ is a guy who is very steeped in public-private partnership. And this is one area I would like to see the World Bank, play more crucial role in Africa. Now, the World Bank has put in so much money. There is so much money on infrastructure going around. But then the challenge in Africa today is to find the bankable projects. So the challenge that we have, not just in Nigeria, all over Africa, is project origination. How do we really get the right project? How do we frame them so that they can really be economically viable and as well as bankable project? So we've had this story about PPPs. In fact, PPPs have not yet taken off. So it's a good thing that AJ has a background on PPPs. So we will be looking towards, bringing his experience to bear, especially in Africa, where a lot of private capital is required to help governments, as additive to government-owned spending, especially on infrastructure.
We have a minute, Professor Hadi. Very quickly, Nigeria is going to get a new president in office in June, the same month when the new World Bank president will be resuming. Do you think, what strategic development or diplomatic engagement are you looking to see from Nigeria to the new World Bank chief when both of them resume office?
Just as I've mentioned. Yeah, so the good thing is that the incoming administration is oriented, market-oriented, private sector-oriented as well. So we're seeing, that partnership needs to happen. Bringing in private capital, especially, with talking about Nigeria's debt situation, the difficulty that the new administration will encounter in raising funds. That means both local, private, and international, private capital will be required, to execute so many of the projects. So the World Bank will be very, very important in the new administration. So I think given the conditions of the World Bank concessional grants, grants and concessional loans. So that presents a low-hanging fruit for the incoming administration. So I think from the one. The president and his cabinet should work hard towards embracing the World Bank, getting themselves into the World Bank agenda from the get-go. It's also a good thing that we have one of our own leading the African Development Bank. We also have another one of our own leading the Afrexim in Egypt. So if we can really harness all this potential that we have, I think Nigeria will go a long way in mopping up the needed capital for our infrastructure needs.
All right, well, thank you for those insights. I wish you a very great weekend. Thank you so much, Professor Bongo Hadi of the Lagos Business School. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.